Post 1. I grew up believing that if I could just anticipate my sister's needs, everything would be calm. We are both late 20s female, born less than 2 years apart. I learned to scan rooms for bright lights, loud music, scratchy tags, crowded corners, anything that might set her off. If a meltdown happened, I apologized first, even if I had not done anything. I watered plants that were not mine. I preheated family dinners so they would be lukewarm instead of hot. I spoke in gentle, slow sentences that made me feel like I was living inside a library sign. Shh, please. It started when we were kids. If I touched the remote, she grabbed my wrist and squeezed until I dropped it. If I wore a perfume sample from a magazine, she snapped the elastic of my ponytail. Our parents would lower their voices and say she was overwhelmed, that her anxiety was spiking, that she might have undiagnosed autism and the bright smell or the channel change was too much. They said she needed love and patience. I gave it. She never said thank you, and I told myself that was not the point. It did not stop with age. She slapped a drink out of my hand at my 21st birthday because the ice clacked against the glass. She shoved me at Thanksgiving when the timer beeped. She clicked her nails against her teeth while she stared at my fiancé, Evan, and told him he talked too loud, even though he had barely spoken. Every incident ended the same. I iced my arm, or wiped a counter, or picked up the pieces, and our parents explained that she had been triggered. They would say clinical-sounding words and change the subject. I began to notice they never produced paperwork, just phrases. When I asked once, gently, if she had an actual diagnosis or a treatment plan, my mother said I was pathologizing my sister and being unkind. I tried accommodations anyway. I offered quiet spaces, noise-dampening headphones, fragrance-free soap, predictable schedules, short goodbyes. I moved my birthday dinner to her favorite tea shop because she said restaurants were too loud. Then she threw a spoon when a toddler laughed. I stopped using candles in my own apartment. Evan never complained, but I watched him measure his steps around her like a person testing thin ice. The most recent incident happened 6 weeks ago at a family dinner meant to celebrate our engagement. We chose a very calm bistro at an early hour. I ordered a simple salad. Evan ordered soup. My sister ordered nothing. She sat with her shoulders tight, tapping her knee. Everyone kept their voices low. Then the waitress set down a small complimentary dessert with a single candle, and my sister stood up so fast her chair tipped. She reached across the table, grabbed my chin, and pressed her thumb into that soft spot under the jaw. It hurt, bright and instant. She hissed that I was selfish for making this a spectacle, and slapped the spoon out of my hand. The dish shattered. The room went silent. I stared at the candle, still flickering in a field of sugar and cream, and my body did a familiar thing. I apologized to the waitress. Our parents pulled me aside outside the bistro and said I needed to remember compassion, that sensory overload feels like pain, that people with anxiety or autism cannot always regulate. They said the candle was thoughtless. Evan said quietly that no one gets to put hands on me. I felt split in two, the trained daughter and the person who's going to marry someone who wants me safe. That night, I sat with an ice pack on my neck and wrote a list of every accommodation I had tried. Next to each item, I wrote the outcome. I realized I had built a life where my comfort was always negotiable and her comfort was sacred. I realized I did not want her at my wedding. The decision came out of me like a breath I had been holding. We sent save the dates with my sister's name omitted, and we braced. The family group chat exploded within an hour. A cousin accused me of hating disabled people. An aunt said I was ruining our parents' lives. My mother texted that I was humiliating my sister for a condition she could not help. My father called Evan to appeal man to man, asking him to be the bigger person and fix this before it spirals. Evan said calmly that we were not inviting someone who had repeatedly assaulted me. My father said the word assaulted was too strong. I felt sick because the bruise on my jaw was a clean purple thumbprint, and I had photos. I offered a compromise I still feel embarrassed about. I said my sister could attend the ceremony if she stayed with a designated support person in a side room, with a plan to leave at the first sign of distress. My mother said that was segregation and that my sister deserved to sit front row. I said then the answer was no. I deleted the group chat from my phone and immediately put it back, because I am still that person who is afraid to miss a chance to make this right. Evan has been steady. He suggested we hire security for the day, not bouncers, just professionals who can keep entrances clear. He said we should inform the venue about potential uninvited guests and ask for a quiet room for me, for once, in case my body shakes. He put his hand over mine and said that our wedding is the first day of our family, and he wants that day to be safe and kind. I cried for 2 hours, not because I was sad about the decision, but because I realized how rarely anyone has centered my safety. I can hear my sister's voice in my head right now, telling me that a live string quartet is intolerable, that white flowers give her a headache, that clinking glasses are like knives. I can hear my mother telling me that if I loved my sister, I would choose a picnic with no music and paper plates and a short ceremony with dim lighting. I can hear all of it, and I am still trying to be fair. I do not want to punish an illness. I do not want to be cruel. I also do not want to be hit on my wedding day. I know people will ask about diagnosis. I do not have access to her records, and I cannot force my parents to produce them. I have begged my sister to try therapy, to try medication if appropriate, to try anything beyond grabbing and striking and blaming. She says I am controlling. She says I weaponize my tears. She says I think I am better than her because I can stand loud music and bright lights. I wish I could turn my sensitivity on and off, the way she seems to turn her violence on and off. So here I am, a month before the wedding, with security deposits paid and a gown hanging from the closet door. I'm not inviting my sister. I'm prepared for fallout. I'm bracing for it, and I'm still second-guessing myself every time my phone buzzes. Am I the jerk for not inviting my sister to my wedding after years of violent sensory overload incidents, even though my parents say I am discriminating against her? Comment 1. You are protecting yourself. Document everything, inform the venue, give photos of your bruise to security, and establish a single point of contact for your parents. Safety is not discrimination. Comment 2. You have bent yourself into a pretzel for years. It is reasonable to have a no-contact boundary for an event where you cannot risk another outburst. Hire security and enjoy your day. Update 1. Some people asked for specifics about what I have already tried. Here is the short version. At family events, I have offered quiet rooms. I have built schedules with breaks. I have done fragrance-free everything. I have hosted sober gatherings with no music. I have asked other guests to lower their voices, which felt humiliating to everyone, including me. I have brought noise-dampening headphones. I have even sent her a list of the menu in advance, so there are no surprises. None of this prevented her from grabbing, shoving, or slapping me when she felt overloaded. When I write it out, it looks like I built an entire world around her thresholds and left none for mine. After post 1, my parents escalated. My mother called to say that unless I invited my sister, she and my father would not attend and would tell relatives I was excluding a disabled family member for optics. She said my sister would be given a quiet room at the venue and the microphone to apologize before the ceremony. I asked how handing her a microphone would help anyone. My mother said it would restore her dignity. I said it would put her in the center of the room and raise the stakes for another outburst. She said I was being dramatic. I said no. She hung up. 2 days later was my bridal shower. It was small, hosted by my maid of honor, Lena, in a sunny room at a local cafe that has soft seating and a private patio. We kept it calm on purpose. Place cards, lemonade, finger sandwiches, no clinking glass games, no surprise music. I sent the guest list to the cafe in advance for security and food prep. My sister was not invited. Halfway through, while I was opening a simple set of mixing bowls, the door chime rang and my stomach dropped. My sister walked in wearing sunglasses and ear defenders like a costume. My mother and father followed 2 steps behind with tight smiles. I stood up without thinking, because my body still tries to make itself small. Lena moved next to me. She asked the manager to call the private security company that works in the building. My sister looked me up and down and said loudly that she had come to make peace. Then she picked up a cupcake from the dessert tier, the pretty ones with sugared flowers, and smushed it into my face. The frosting went up my nose. The room froze. I could taste vanilla and iron at the same time because my lip split on my tooth. I froze for 1 second, and then something in me clicked. I did not apologize. I did not explain. I walked into the bathroom and washed my face. When I came back, the building security was speaking to my parents and my sister on the patio. My sister was insisting she had been provoked by the noise of the plates. The room had been quiet. My mother was telling the guard that my sister has sensory issues and that this was a misunderstanding. Lena's hands were shaking as she dabbed my lip and then squared her shoulders like she was done being quiet. She told the guard exactly what happened in a calm voice. A guest filmed the last part of the encounter, where my sister raised her hand again and the guard stepped between us. The guard asked them to leave. My father tried to bargain and suggested they stay if everyone promises to keep it down. The guard repeated the request. They left, but not before my sister pointed at my face and said, "See? Spectacle." My phone lit up with messages before I even got home. A cousin accused me of baiting my sister by inviting people who talk. An aunt wrote a paragraph about forgiveness and how I will regret alienating family once the wedding high fades. A woman from church I barely know texted me a link about inclusion and said I should open my heart. I'm embarrassed to admit I almost replied to each person with a long explanation. Instead, I put my phone on the table, set a timer for 15 minutes, and cried. When the timer went off, I took photos of my split lip and the frosting stains on my dress. Then I called the venue. Evan came home early from a job and sat on the floor across from me while I spoke to the venue manager. He did not interrupt. He only reached out his hand, and I put my foot on it like a child who needed a ground. The manager was professional. She asked for names and photos. She recommended we hire 2 licensed guards for the day and provide a short list of uninvited individuals. She suggested a single point of contact to handle family in the moment so the staff is not pulled in different directions. She asked if I wanted to add a note to our contract about trespass procedures and to designate a room for me if I needed quiet. Not for my sister, for me. I agreed to everything. My hands shook, but I signed the contract amendment and paid the deposit for security. We also spoke to a local police community liaison. I learned that I could ask for a non-criminal trespass notice if my sister shows up uninvited, and that prior documentation helps. The officer told me to keep all messages and photos. He was neutral and kind. He said that weddings attract high emotion and that planning for safety is not discrimination. Hearing that out loud felt like a splint on a sprain. I sent my parents and my sister a short, clear email. It said, "After the incident at the bridal shower, I'm instituting no contact until after the wedding. Do not attend the wedding or related events. If you attempt to enter, security will ask you to leave. If you refuse, the police will be called. I will revisit contact after the wedding with a therapist present. I read it 3 times. I did not explain or justify. I hit send. Then I turned my phone off and went for a walk. When I turned it back on, there were 23 new messages. My mother accused me of humiliating my sister and warned me that lawsuits happen when disabled people are excluded. My father asked if I was happy now that I had driven a wedge through the family. My sister sent a voice note I did not listen to. I do not think I need to hear her version of the cupcake in my face. Lena texted that she had already backed up the video and that she was proud of me for not apologizing. Evan sent a photo of our dog sleeping upside down and wrote, "Small good things are still real." I keep thinking about how I always built a quiet room for my sister. Now I am building one for myself. Not a physical room, though we did designate a space at the venue. I mean a boundary that is not up for debate. If I falter, I look at the photo of the thumbprint on my jaw and the shallow cut on my lip. My body is a record of what has happened. I'm allowed to believe it. So this is where we are. Security is hired. The venue has our list. The staff know my parents and sister are not to be admitted. I have stated no contact until after the wedding. I know some people will say I escalated by involving security and police. I hear that fear inside me too. but my lip still aches when I drink tea, and I am done gambling my safety for other people's comfort. Comment 1. This is exactly how you protect yourself. Document. Keep the email short. Let security and the venue handle any attempted entry. You are not excluding a disability, you are excluding assault. Comment 2. Consider sending one final message to extended family through a neutral person. Something like, "We will not discuss this further. Please respect our decision," then mute the group chat. Update 2. I thought the bridal shower incident would calm people down. It did the opposite. Word traveled through our family chat and beyond, and I woke up to messages from people I have not seen since high school. A cousin I barely know sent a voice note saying, "I am punishing a disability." An aunt wrote that when I am older and no longer the pretty bride, I will regret throwing away family for a party. A woman from church tagged me in a long Facebook post about compassion and inclusion with a stock photo of clasped hands. It was like the internet decided my sister's diagnosis was a public fact, and my lack of invitation made me a public sin. I kept hearing a sentence from the community liaison: "Planning for safety is not discrimination." I wanted that sentence to be more than air. I needed to know whether there were actual diagnoses that would change how we plan. I am not a clinician. I also do not want to be an amateur detective with my sister's privacy. So I hired a licensed care coordinator for a short consult. The coordinator's job was not to pry. It was to ask my parents and my sister to share whatever records they felt comfortable sharing so we could plan accommodations correctly if needed. I sent one email to my parents and my sister, introducing the coordinator and asking them to route anything through her. I wrote, "I will not read your records. The coordinator will summarize only what is relevant for event planning. If you prefer to share nothing, that is your choice." It felt fair. It also felt like a test of whether the story we have been told has weight on paper. For a day, there was silence. Then my father replied that he would pull together documentation. My mother replied separately that I was medicalizing a family issue. My sister sent the coordinator a single urgent care discharge note from 2 years ago, where she had gone in after an argument and been diagnosed with an anxiety episode, given a short course of hydroxyzine, and told to follow up with outpatient therapy. The note did not mention autism. The coordinator thanked her for sharing and asked if there were evaluations or long-term treatment notes to help us plan. No reply. My father sent 3 more documents. One was a pediatric note from middle school where a provider wrote that my sister had sensory preferences and that the family might benefit from parent coaching. One was a college counseling center intake where she reported anger, sleep problems, and conflict with roommates. The counselor wrote "rule out mood disorder" and recommended skills-based therapy. The last was an outpatient therapist's discharge letter from 5 years ago, which said my sister had stopped attending sessions after 4 visits, and that future goals should include emotion regulation, coping skills, and boundary work. The coordinator took notes. The phrase that rang in my ears was not a diagnosis, it was boundary work. I cried a little, not because I felt vindicated, but because I felt like the air in our house as children had been made of suggestions and whispers rather than plans. My parents are not evil, but they fed me a fog and called it medicine. They told me there were clinical reasons for the harm, and maybe there are clinical reasons for my sister's distress, but there has never been a plan that included accountability. The coordinator drafted a neutral summary. It said, "Records provided include one urgent care visit for acute anxiety, a pediatric note listing sensory preferences, a college counseling intake, noting anger and sleep disturbance, and a therapist discharge recommending coping skills and boundaries." There is no confirmed autism diagnosis in the materials provided. Planning accommodations may include an exit route and low stimulation areas for guests who need them, but given the safety incidents and physical aggression, the priority remains the safety plan you have already instituted. The coordinator asked me whether I wanted her to share the summary with my parents and my sister. I said yes. If we are going to speak about this, we should be speaking from the same page. The reaction was immediate. My mother said I had sent a stranger to interrogate the family. My father said that the coordinator was minimizing neurodivergence. My sister wrote, "I do not need a piece of paper to prove how noise feels." I agree. Pain does not need paper. But harm leaves evidence, and my face still remembers frosting and a split lip. A few relatives reached out in quieter tones. One older cousin, who never says much, texted me, "For what it is worth, I have never seen her lose it with anyone except you." That sentence sat heavy. It felt like confirmation of a pattern I did not want to name. Another cousin sent a practical message. "If your parents show up at the venue with her and say medical emergency, tell the staff to call the designated contact only. Do not argue at the door." It was the first piece of advice that assumed my safety mattered. A small part of me still wondered whether hiring the coordinator was cruel. Then the coordinator asked me one more question. She said, "If your sister had an established care team and a current plan, what would you need from them for a safe event?" I realized the answer. I would need them to say, in writing, that physical aggression is not a reasonable accommodation. That safety is the base layer. That love does not mean I have to be reachable by a hand. Without that baseline, the rest is set dressing. The pile-on continued, even after the summary went out. A church acquaintance messaged me that a good bride would make space for everyone, and an aunt wrote that I am throwing away my only sibling over noise complaints. I stopped responding. Lena now has the extended family thread on mute and will only unmute for true logistics. Evan keeps repeating one sentence like a lighthouse. "We are not inviting someone who hurts you." It is simple and it is everything. I'm grateful for this sub, even if that sounds corny. If I had not written post 1, if you had not told me to document and to plan, I think I would have folded. I think I would have invited my sister and prayed for quiet and turned my body into an apology when the crash came. Instead, we have a list of names for the front desk, a security contact, a map of the venue with exit routes, a designated calm room for me, not for my sister, and a letter from a coordinator that says the words I needed to hear. Safety first, boundaries recommended, no confirmed autism diagnosis in the materials provided. I'm not diagnosing my sister. I'm also not erasing the bruises on my body by calling them something gentle. Both things can be true at once. I can have compassion for her discomfort and refuse to be hit. I can love my parents and decline to let them rewrite the rules of my wedding. Comment 1. As an event manager, your plan is solid. Share the coordinator's summary with the venue. Keep the list at check-in. Direct all family to a single contact, and let staff follow protocol. You are not excluding a disability. You are enforcing safety. Comment 2. The records you were given matter. No one needs a label to deserve kindness, but no label gives anyone a license to harm. Hold your boundary. Update 3. Our rehearsal dinner was supposed to be the easy part. Small guest list. Early start time. Private back room at a quiet restaurant that smells like rosemary and warm bread. I wore a simple dress. Evan ironed his shirt twice because nervous hands need a task. Lena brought a folder with copies of the security contract and the list for the front desk. We gave the host a photo of my parents and my sister with a gentle script. If they arrive, please call the manager and our designated contact. No entry. The staff nodded like they had done this before for other families, which made me feel less alone and also sad. For the first hour, everything was ordinary. Evan's father toasted with sparkling water. My aunt on my father's side, who has stayed neutral in all this, told a story about my first bike and how I rode with training wheels too long because I did not like falling. I looked at Evan and thought, we have spent so much time on safety that we forgot the pieces that are allowed to be happy. My shoulders dropped for the first time in weeks. Then the door to the private room opened, and my shoulder muscles learned a new definition of tight. My sister stepped in wearing ear defenders and dark sunglasses, even though the light was dim. My parents were behind her, faces set like people who think they are finally doing something brave. The host was right behind them, talking into a radio, eyes wide with apology. I stood up without thinking. That old reflex again. Lena stood up too, faster than me, and moved between us. Evan reached for my hand under the table. The room went quiet, like a record needle lifting. My sister said in a clear voice that she wanted to address the room. She said this was about family, not about rules. She raised her hand like someone who wants a microphone. Evan spoke first. He said, calm and even, that they needed to leave. He said our agreement was clear. My mother stepped forward and said we were embarrassing ourselves by treating a medical situation like a discipline problem. My father said this was our last chance to do the right thing before the wedding. The restaurant manager appeared at the door with two licensed guards. They looked like ordinary people in suits. No one grabbed anyone. One guard said, with the right amount of authority, that this was a private event and they needed to go. My sister's mouth flattened. She did not move. There is a moment before a storm when the air tastes strange. That is how the room felt. Then my sister reached toward the nearest bouquet on a side table. It was a simple vase with green stems and white flowers. Before anyone understood her intent, she lifted the vase and swung it toward me. Not a full throw. A swinging strike like a person swatting a fly. The glass clipped my shoulder, not hard enough to break skin, but hard enough to bruise. Guests gasped. I did not cry. I did not apologize. I did not shrink. I heard something click in my head, not a sound, more like a line snapping and a new one anchoring in. The guards stepped in. The manager asked someone to call the police. Evan pulled me back with a hand I trusted. The guard closest to my sister put a palm up at chest height, not touching, just blocking. My sister yelled that the music was too loud. There was no music. She yelled that the flowers were sharp. They were peonies. She yelled that people were staring. They were because she had swung a glass object at a bride in a dress that had taken 3 fittings to get right. My mother began to plead with the guard. She said my sister needed a quiet corner to cool off. The guard had the practiced voice of someone who has done this many times. He said the exit was the quietest corner. The police arrived quickly. 2 officers, body cameras on, professional, not dramatic. They separated my parents and my sister from us and took statements. I told the story plain. I kept my hands flat on the table because I did not want anyone to say I was animated or aggressive. The officer nodded and asked if I wanted to pursue a report for assault. He said it plainly. Assault. The word did not burn the way it did when my father told me it was too strong. It felt like a fact. Evan squeezed my hand and said he would support whatever I chose. I said yes. My voice shook, and I said yes. In the parking lot, my sister was pacing. The body cameras caught more than I expected. My sister said to her boyfriend, who had arrived at some point, that now we would have to invite her, or we would look like monsters. She said, "This is how you make them do what you want." She looked straight at the camera and did not blink. When the officer told me later what she had said, I felt the kind of cold that starts in the chest and moves out to the fingers. The officers issued a trespass notice for the restaurant. They explained how an emergency protection order works for a time-bound situation. I did not know you could request something that specific, but the officer said our local court has a simple process for orders that cover an event. He offered to walk us through it at the station that evening if we wanted to make sure the wedding day was protected. I looked at Evan. He looked at me. We said yes. We finished the rehearsal dinner in a smaller circle. My parents left with my sister as the officers wrote the report. A few friends offered hugs. Lena put the bouquet in the kitchen so I would not keep staring at it. Evan's father made everyone laugh by telling a story about a burnt pie that somehow ends with a happy marriage. I kept expecting to fall apart, but I did not. I felt steady like dry ground after months of mud. At the station, the process was surreal and kind. We gave statements again. We showed the video from the rehearsal dinner and the video from the bridal shower. We provided copies of the email I sent with the no contact boundary. The officer typed and nodded and only once said, "I am sorry you are dealing with this." The judge on duty reviewed the application by video. He asked a few specific questions, then granted a temporary protection order that named my sister and covered the wedding day and the venue's address, with a perimeter that included the parking lot. It also allowed the officers to remove her without warning if she appeared on site. I did not know you could draw a protective circle around a day. Seeing it on paper felt like a hand on my back saying, "Go forward." We went home. I took off my dress and checked my shoulder. A round bruise was already blooming, a map of exactly where the glass had landed. I took a photo and added it to the folder. I messaged the venue manager with a copy of the order and the list of names. She replied that the guards would be briefed and that the front desk would have a copy on hand. Lena texted 3 heart emojis, which is her way of not saying too much when she knows I am at my limit. Evan made tea. We did not talk for a while. Quiet can be kind when no one is waiting for you to make it easier. I do not know what my parents will tell themselves about what happened. I know what I saw. I know what the camera recorded. I know what the judge signed. I know I am allowed to have a wedding day that is not a test of how fast I can forgive. Safety is not cruelty. Boundaries are not a lack of love. They are a shape that makes love possible. The ceremony is in 2 days. The order is in place. The plan is set. I am nervous in the ordinary ways now, about vows and shoes, and whether my hairpins will hold. That feels like a kind of miracle. Comment 1. You did everything right. Document, report, and secure a time-bound order. Share the order with the venue and the guards. On the day, let staff handle any contact at the perimeter and keep your phone with Lena. Breathe. You are safe. Comment 2. Event planner here. Have one person stationed at the entrance with a printed photo sheet and the order, and a second person who can walk you to the calm room if needed. Your system is tight. Enjoy your rehearsal and your day. Update 4. The morning of the wedding began with soft light and a quiet kitchen. Evan brewed coffee. I ate half a banana because my stomach was a fist. Lena arrived at 8 with a clipboard and a bag of hairpins, already in mission mode. We reviewed the plan with the venue manager in the lobby. Copies of the protection order were at the front desk and with both guards. The photo sheet with my parents and my sister sat in a clear sleeve. There was a calm room for me, not an afterthought closet, but a small library with a lock, tea, and tissues. Seeing it made my shoulders drop a fraction. By 10, hair and makeup hummed like a low radio. My dress waited on a mannequin. My shoes looked more fragile than they are. Evan texted me a photo of his cufflinks and a single sentence. "I am here." It helped. Then the front desk called Lena. Spoofed calls had started. Someone was phoning vendors and staff pretending to be me, insisting the quartet cancel and the caterer switch to cold food. The manager confirmed all details, with Lena using the code phrase we had chosen, maple tea. It felt ridiculous when we picked it. It saved us from chaos. The quartet arrived on time. The caterer did not change a thing. At 11:30, the side door camera pinged. 2 figures at the entrance, one in large sunglasses. The guard radioed the desk. My sister and my parents were outside. My chest went cold and hot at the same time. We expected this. Expecting something does not make it gentle. The guard approached them with the order in hand. My mother said, loud enough for the microphone to catch, that there was a medical emergency and they needed to get inside now. The guard asked what the emergency was. She said my sister required a quiet room. He pointed at the perimeter line on the map and said there was a court order and they needed to leave the property. My father said they had a right to see their daughter on her wedding day. The guard repeated the instruction. My sister stared at the door and went very still. The stillness is always worse than the yelling. They tried a different angle. My father told the guard to use his discretion because the court does not understand family. The guard said he would call the police to assist with compliance. My mother pivoted to pleading. She cried. My sister took a step forward. The guard put up his hand, not touching, just a boundary. She said the word spectacle. I felt the ghost of frosting on my lip. We waited in the bridal suite while the guards handled it. Waiting made every second feel like wet wool. I could hear small sounds through the vents. Radio clicks, footsteps, a distant door. I tried not to picture the vase at the rehearsal dinner or the cupcake at the shower. I focused on the weight of my dress on its hanger. Cloth, zipper, buttons, real things. The police arrived in minutes. The officer from the rehearsal dinner was among them. He spoke to my parents and my sister just out of sight. He told them the order covered the parking lot and all entrances. He told them they would be cited if they refused to leave. My mother argued medical necessity. The officer said a medical emergency requires an ambulance, not entry to a private event. My sister said the sun was too bright. She slipped past the planter and moved faster than I remembered she could. She reached the vestibule before the second guard blocked the inner door. In that small space, surrounded by glass and flowers and linen, the air snapped. My sister grabbed a centerpiece from a staging table and hurled it toward the hall. It did not reach me. It struck a bridesmaid who had stepped out to check on logistics. She cried out and clutched her forearm. The vase shattered. Water and white petals slid in a slow sheet across the tile. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the officer stepped in, took my sister by the arm, and guided her back across the threshold. Calm. Professional. Final. My bridesmaid was shaken and bleeding along a long, shallow cut. Lena led her to a chair and pressed a clean towel to the wound. The venue manager was already mopping the floor, moving like a person who has done this before. The officer issued a citation and told my parents they had to leave. He used the phrase, willful violation of a protective order. The words sounded like doors closing in a long hallway. My mother turned her face away, as if refusing to look made it less true. My father's shoulders crumpled for a second and then squared. They chose to leave with my sister. For a moment after the front doors closed, my knees wanted to fold. I walked into the calm room and shut the door. I let my hands shake. I let the adrenaline pass through. I looked at my face in the mirror and practiced the act of being a person who is allowed to be celebrated. I told myself out loud that safety is not cruelty. I told myself that love without boundaries is not love, it is noise. When I came back, the library smell of old paper clung to my dress. Lena handed me water. The bridesmaid had a neat line of paper tape on her arm and a joke ready about combat pay for standing near a floral arrangement. The quartet tuned in the next room. Evan texted the maple tea phrase and then a heart. The venue manager said the entrance was clear and the perimeter contained. The officers would station a car at the end of the drive until after the ceremony. The path forward was plain. We moved to the backup room for the ceremony, a smaller space with tall windows. The light was better there anyway. As I walked down the aisle, I saw empty chairs where my parents would have been. The absence felt like a bruise. Behind that ache was a new sensation. Space. Air where panic used to sit. Evan looked at me the way you look at someone who chose you and themselves at the same time. We said our vows without our voices breaking. When the quartet began, I did not scan for my sister at the door. I listened. There was fallout, of course. My phone vibrated in my bag with messages I did not read. But when we kissed, the room clapped and no one flinched. We ate food that was hot, not tepid. We danced. Someone clinked a glass by accident, and nothing bad happened. I had a wedding day, not a test. A day. After midnight, when the last song ended, I wrote one sentence in my notes app so I would not forget how this felt. I wrote, I did not apologize for existing. It looked small on the screen. It felt enormous in my chest. Comment 1. You handled a worst-case scenario exactly right. The code phrase, the order, the perimeter, the calm room for you. I am glad the officer enforced the order and that your bridesmaid is okay. Please ask the venue to invoice damages directly to your sister. Comment 2. I'm so proud of you for walking back out after the calm room and claiming your day. Boundaries made it possible for love to be heard over the noise. Update 5. I woke up the morning after our wedding and realized my shoulders were not touching my ears. It took a second to understand the silence. No buzzing phone on the nightstand. No internal script drafting apologies. Just quiet. Evan brought coffee to the balcony, and we looked at the city like it was a place that could stay standing. I thought that was the ending. Then the internet found us. Around noon, a cousin sent a link. My sister had posted a stitched video on her account. Clips from the bridal shower and the rehearsal dinner taken out of order with captions in large font. Banned for being disabled. Sister hates neurodivergent people. A clip from the vestibule where she held her hand to her forehead and said the sun hurt her eyes. She did not include the part where the centerpiece hit my bridesmaid's arm and shattered. She added a call to action, asking people to share if they believe in kindness. The comments were a mix of strangers saying words like monster and family and forgiveness. My name was not in the video, but people in our town know how to connect dots. I felt the old dizziness for a minute. Then I opened the folder I had built: photos of injuries, emails, the protection order, the notice from the officer that she had been cited for willful violation, the security contract, dates, times, names. I breathed through the urge to write a long public post. Instead, I called our attorney. He had already seen the video because Lena had sent it at dawn with a single line. Please advise. He recommended a short cease and desist that cited defamation and requested removal of false statements. He attached a copy of the court order to demonstrate that my actions were based on safety planning, not discrimination. He sent it to my sister and to my parents as her self-appointed advocates. He sent a separate letter to the venue's insurer with invoices for the broken vases and cleanup. The venue manager promised to pursue restitution through the criminal case. She had already filed a victim impact statement on behalf of the staff and my injured bridesmaid. I worried that I was becoming a person who lives by letterhead. Then the attorney said something that felt like a small light. You are not fighting. You are ending the fight. I wrote that down. The first court date came fast. It was a preliminary hearing on the citation from the wedding day and the assault at the rehearsal dinner considered together. My sister arrived in a neutral sweater with my parents on either side. Her boyfriend sat in the second row. Evan held my hand the way you hold a fragile thing without making it feel fragile. The judge asked direct questions. He watched the body camera footage. He watched the lobby camera clip where my sister said, "This is how you make them do what you want." He read the coordinator's summary, noting no confirmed autism diagnosis in the records provided, and the recommendation for skills-based therapy and boundary work. The prosecutor requested probation, restitution for the venue, and my bridesmaid's medical bill, a small fine, and a requirement to complete an anger management program verified by the court. My sister's public defender argued stress and family pressure. The judge spoke in a voice that left no space for argument. He said disabilities do not entitle anyone to place hands on another person. He said medical accommodations are not a shield for violence. He granted probation, restitution, the fine, community service, and the program. He added a condition that any contact with me must be through counsel until the probation term ends. After the hearing, my parents did not look at me. My mother stared at a fixed point on the wall. My father told a reporter outside that the court did not understand family. I went home and paid the last wedding invoice and sent a thank you letter to the venue manager with a gift card for the staff. I mailed a handwritten note to our bridesmaid with a copy of the court order and a promise that her emergency room bill would be covered by restitution. She texted back a photo of the paper tape on her arm and a joke about acquiring an interesting wedding story for future parties. The cease and desist worked in a small way. My sister removed the video, but replaced it with a long text post claiming she had been silenced. She said people were spreading lies about her diagnoses. She said I had always been jealous of how sensitive she is. I did not reply. I focused on the logistics of closure. The venue filed their claim. Our attorney forwarded the court's restitution schedule. The community liaison emailed to say the temporary order had expired as planned and that I should contact him if I needed help with a longer order, which I do not at this time. The family pressure did not stop, but it changed tone. The same aunt who had written about throwing away family now wrote, "Perhaps you have made your point." A cousin texted, "I am sorry I piled on." I did not know the details. A church acquaintance removed her post and sent me a private message that included the words, "I was wrong." My parents left a voicemail that said they were disappointed the court had been harsh and that they hoped the restitution would not ruin my sister's future. I listened twice to make sure they had said harsh and not fair. I blocked the number for a week and let the silence do its work. There was one message that stuck under my skin, a comment on a friend's photo of our wedding. "You ruined a family over a few loud noises." I should have ignored it. Instead, I replied once, clear and short. "I did not ruin a family." I refused to be hit again. I muted the thread. Later, I took a screenshot and put it in the folder. Part of me wanted to delete the entire archive and pretend none of this happened. Another part knows that keeping a record is how I keep the narrative honest in my own head. We are not saints. I know my parents are exhausted. They have carried a story for so long that putting it down looks like failure. I wish they could see that a new story exists where everyone gets help in the right places. The court-appointed evaluator wrote it plainly in his report. No evidence of autism diagnosis in the materials reviewed. Strong recommendation for anger management, coping skills training, and structured boundaries with family. I did not need the report to know these things. Having it in writing is not about shaming my sister. It is about telling the truth to myself. Evan and I made a pact after the hearing. For the next month, our home would be a place where celebration gets first pick. We opened our gifts slowly. We wrote thank you cards with real sentences. We ate leftover cake on the couch and watched the dog fall asleep upside down with his legs in the air. When we talk about the wedding, we do not lead with the vestibule. We lead with the light in the backup room and the way the quartet played just a fraction slower and the moment I felt my body exist without bracing. I know there will be more conversations. I know my parents will ask for a meeting. I am not ready. For now, I have a boundary and a husband and a photograph where I am laughing with my mouth open and my eyes not watching the door. Comment 1. Good. Keep everything through counsel. Let restitution and probation run their course. If your parents want contact, offer it with a therapist present after the term ends. You protected yourself and your guests. Comment 2. I think you went too far taking it legal. Families should handle this privately and give grace. You made your sister's life harder. OP. I tried private grace for 20 years. I was slapped, shoved, and hit with a centerpiece. The legal path stopped the harm. Grace and safety can coexist, but safety comes first. Final update. 8 months later. 8 months out, I can finally describe my life without starting in the vestibule. Our apartment feels like a place that remembers laughter first. Evan keeps coffee beans in a glass jar on the counter, and I can smell them when I open the door. The dog still sleeps upside down with his legs in the air. I hung one wedding photo in the hallway. It is the one from the backup room with the tall windows where the light made everything look like morning. When I pass it, my shoulders do not rise. That is new. The legal pieces settled into something ordinary. My sister completed the first anger management module and logged community service hours at a supervised program. The court processed restitution for the venue and for my bridesmaid's medical bill. Checks arrived like small punctuation marks. Nothing dramatic. Just a system doing the slow work of consequence. The probation officer sent a midterm note that my sister attends appointments, arrives late sometimes, shows some effort, and refuses to discuss specific events. The phrase refuses to discuss made me feel both sad and free. I do not need her admission to begin my next chapter. My parents started counseling. They told me in a short email that the counselor asked them to list what they can control. They wrote, "We can control whether we argue at doors." That sentence was the first time I saw the shape of accountability in their language. We are not repaired. We are cautious. We met twice in a therapist's office with 2 chairs angled carefully and a box of tissues that stayed closed. I said my boundary out loud, calmly, like reading a recipe. No contact with my sister until she completes the court program and asks to meet with a mediator present. No attendance at our home unless both of us feel safe. No debates at thresholds. My parents nodded and said they could live with that. We left without hugging. Respect felt cleaner than forced closeness. There is a version of this story where I say I wish none of it happened. I do. I also see that without the crisis, I would still be designing rooms around someone else's weather. The quiet room at the venue became a quiet room in my head. I go there when my phone lights with a name that used to make my stomach fold. I go there when a relative tries to rewrite cause and effect. It is a place where I can feel compassion without erasing the bruise. Day to day, we are ordinary newlyweds. We argued about a shelf and then laughed because the shelf was crooked and neither of us cared. We hosted a game night with friends who showed up during the worst weeks and they stayed late washing dishes in a contented line. I took a small promotion at work because I was no longer spending my evenings drafting apologies. Evan switched to a schedule that gives him every other Friday off. We drive to the lake and sit in the car with the windows cracked even when it rains. Peace has a sound and it is small. It is the clink of a mug on a saucer without anyone flinching. People still try to tell me versions of my story. A distant cousin posted a memory about how family forgives, as if forgiveness looks like unlocked doors without conditions. I do not comment. My forgiveness is private and does not require proximity. It does not require I be reachable by a hand. The venue manager sent a holiday card that said, "Wishing you many quiet rooms where you are the honored guest." I put it on the mantle. It made me cry in the easy, grateful way. Lena got engaged. She asked me to be there when she tries on dresses. I said yes and meant it with my whole body. I have not seen my sister since the hearing.